What is up, guys, and welcome to the 7 levels of psychedelics. Coming in at level 1, we have high dose cannabis edibles. And before we get anybody coming after me in the comments, because you guys love to write an entire essay, these technically aren't psychedelics, right? But if you take high enough doses of weed, it does the thing where your brain just doesn't work right. Basically, it turns you into someone who actually enjoyed the Star Wars prequels. Colors get brighter, your thoughts start to get louder, and your sense of time kind of dwindles and turns off just a little bit. And this is at level 1 because it's the first experience where people kind of get into feeling a psychedelic without actually taking a psychedelic. So I thought it would fit to put at level 1. And more importantly, the effects stay on the much milder side compared to everything else on this little list that I have. Like, you don't have any kind of ego death or like my soul just left my body things. You just kind of have a little bit of hallucinations, a little bit of swirly vision, a little bit of tripping, but nothing crazy. Now, the biggest issue with like edible weed gummies is how unpredictable they could be, because you could take like 2 gummies one day, right, and be fine, and then the next day take the exact same 2 gummies and have a totally different experience. Like the first night you could be just chilling, watching YouTube, you know, tripping a little bit, swirly vision, but nothing crazy, and then the next day you could do the exact same amount, the same amount of milligrams, and feel like your DoorDash driver is hearing your thoughts. There's no consistent trip style like there is with shrooms or LSD or other classic psychedelics. It's basically a lottery where you could either get a pretty funny night or a mildly concerning one. And that's why it stays at level 1, because even whenever it gets bad, it's nowhere near as crazy as the other psychedelics we have here. The other drawback to this is the classic edible delay, because these take, 30 minutes or more to actually kick in. So people who don't really know what they're doing will often take some gummies, wait, 20 minutes and feel absolutely nothing, and they're like, what the fuck? This isn't how it's supposed to go. So they end up taking more without knowing that they're actually putting themselves in a completely like sensory overloading situation. And this leads to the classic spiral of weed that I'm sure most people know of, at least if you're, around it at all, which is where you're lying on the bathroom, like Googling, can you overdose on weed, texting your friends like you're writing your last will, and it's just not fun. And again, from an objective standpoint, most of the tripping here comes from more of like anxiety and sensory overload more than your brain actually like technically scientifically tripping. So I just want to say, because you guys love to get mad at me for getting a little bit of things wrong, this is not a psychedelic, but you can still do the psychedelic things on it, just to a very mild extent. I will say this though, weed gummies are, without endorsing them at all, I'm just speaking, metaphorically, they are the perfect introduction into psychedelics for what it is, because you get some time distortion, you get a little bit of visual hallucination, you get all these things, but without, feeling like your brain's insides got like fucked up. You get to come down without feeling like your entire identity changed. It's kind of like putting your toes into the water of psychedelics. And that's why these gummies are at level 1. They are kind of the introduction, a little starter pack, but not really psychedelic yet. So for that, we need to get into level 2. Coming in at level 2, we have LSA, which is kind of the sleepier, weird cousin of LSD. And I just want to put this out here. LSA is not some fun DIY legal variant of LSD or anything like that. It's still pretty fucked up. It's a real chemical found in Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds and morning glory seeds, and the effects can actually get surprisingly intense depending on how far you go with it. But compared to everything else on this list, LSA is still on the gentler side of the spectrum. The visuals are mild, the whole experience feels more dreamy than chaotic, and the whole trip is like more sedating rather than anything else. It's just kind of like chill, I guess. It's like if you took psychedelics, but it's in those like, those like edits on Instagram of like the anime dude or whatever, like sitting in the bed listening to music, and it feels like it's coming from, like a different room where it's like muted. That's kind of what LSA is. Like that's like the vibe. Now, despite sounding like a discount version of LSD, LSA actually definitely has its own identity. And one of the biggest things that makes it unique is its body load. It's heavy. There's nausea, cold limbs, and this weird tight feeling that you get in your muscles that can actually get a lot of people to want to give up before the trip even starts. Like, it's kind of like the whole trip is your brain telling you let's just lie down for a little bit. So kind of like me after I eat the fajitas that came out sizzling. And that's one reason why LSA fits at level 2, because it's psychedelic, but you're going to be way more focused on the physical discomfort than any visuals happening around you. This isn't the kind of psychedelic where you start seeing cosmic geometry or you're going to a different dimension. It's more like an introspective daydream with stomach problems. The actual experience, at least when people can kind of avoid or ignore the feeling weird, is again kind of sedating and melancholy. It mostly makes people just start thinking about their lives and choices they've made, things they regret, people they used to know, people they used to love, that kind of thing. It's not aggressive and loud like LSD. It's not big and sharp or anything. It's kind of like if someone dimmed the lights in your brain and then handed you a notebook to start writing down your journaling and your traumas and what you've been avoiding in your life. This could be good or bad depending on the person. Some people can get some, healthy self-reflection, introspection from this, and some people can take it and then be thinking about everything they've done since the 5th grade. The reason why LSA is sitting here at level 2 and not any higher is that it's still a psychedelic. It does the psychedelic stuff, but it's just kind of muted and mild and like the loser version of psychedelics, and again, I'm not endorsing any psychedelic use at all, but that's kind of why it's at level 2. And before we get into level 3, I just want to point out, sorry for the boxes and shit. I'm moving, new apartment, so it's gonna be a little bit messy, so sorry. But now we move into level 3. Coming in at level 3, we have psilocybin mushrooms. These are probably one of, if not the most iconic psychedelic ever. This is, unlike LSA and weed gummies, the first one we're talking about that goes into real iconic psychedelic territory. Like crazy visuals, way more emotional, way more immersive. Everything you think of when you think psychedelics, this is we're finally there. People don't just feel high on mushrooms. They feel like they've entered an entirely different dimension of reality. Like walls start breathing, colors have smell, and everything has this significance that you can't describe it unless you've felt it. Like everything just feels important. This is the first tier where people can genuinely start losing their sense of time, forget what they're saying mid-sentence, and feel like they're watching their own thoughts instead of, thinking them. Now, what makes shrooms stay here at level 3 and not any higher is the amount of mental leeway and free space it still gives you, because sure, you're iconic tripping, like the real psychedelic trip, but the whole time you still kind of know that you're tripping. Like shrooms give you enough headspace to still understand what's going on and not get too lost in it. That doesn't mean that the experience is easy though, by any means. It's still a lot. I mean, shrooms are famous for bringing up old emotions, bringing up shit people haven't dealt with, and really famous for giving people this sudden emotional cosmic clarity about their life and about everything that they're dealing with. But the experience stays grounded. It's trippy, it's colorful, it's psychedelic, but you don't really lose your identity yet. That's what we're gonna get into later in this video, but at this point, not really yet. The big thing with psilocybin is how unpredictable the emotional side is. Like, you can be tripping on shrooms and one minute you're laughing about how the carpet looks or just some random bullshit, and then the next second you're crying because you remembered your old cat that died when you were 6 years old or whatever. Which, by the way, if that happens, that's totally understandable, dude. I miss my dead cat, but you get what I'm saying. Shrooms tend to amplify what you're already feeling, and this is where the whole iconic set and setting thing becomes important, because if you're in a good set and setting, if you're in a good environment, the shroom trip will go pretty well. But if you're in a bad environment, like if you're stressed, somewhere you're not comfortable, you'll have a bad trip because it just kind of amplifies what you're already feeling. But even at its worst, even at the most intense of trips, shroom doesn't really get anywhere close to the worst of like LSD or DMT, which we'll talk about later. So yeah, shrooms are the classic, safe, whatever, psychedelic, not legal, don't do it. I'm not saying you should do it, but that's where shrooms are, which leads us into level 4. Coming in at level 4, we have mescaline, most commonly taken through peyote or San Pedro cactus. And again, at this point in this video, we're not talking about kind of psychedelics anymore. This is about the same intensity of shrooms, but just in its own different way, which is why it's slightly higher on this level hierarchy. Mescaline has a very long history of ceremonial and religious use, and you can feel that in the trip. The trip reflects that very strongly. You're not going into this for some kind of party drug or anything like that. You're gonna get clear visuals, strong introspection, and just a very spiritual experience. Compared to shrooms, mescaline is often said to be a lot more orderly and sharp. You still get visuals, a lot of visuals, but instead of things breathing and being wavy, you get sharp geometric patterns that are clear. And mentally, you're still very present. You don't really seem to get lost in your thoughts a lot like you would on like a mushroom trip. You can still think things, stay in a straight line with your thoughts, and you don't get sidetracked too much. Emotionally, mescaline tends to lean more toward calm introspection than raw chaos, which I know I've said that about pretty much all of them, but this one really is different because it's not like you're being, thrown into the lion's den of your trauma. It's more like the drug takes you slowly through it, where it feels a lot more controlled and easy to process and not quite as overwhelming or big. And the trade-off there is that in order to do that, the trip usually lasts 10 to 14 hours. So this drug is in your system a lot longer than like shrooms are. So even if the headspace is gentler and easier on you, that length of tripping is, from users saying, it's very exhausting and tiring and just a lot on the brain. Like you're usually more drained after a trip of this stuff that, seems more straightforward and easy, but it's just so fucking long that like you end up being even more drained from that than you are from, shrooms. And that's why I put this here, is that it's at level 4 because number 1, the ceremonial aspect, it's interesting that it's like a spiritual thing, and number 2, it lasts up to fucking 14 hours. Like that's crazy. It's a long trip. I just looked it up because I didn't put this in my script when I was researching, but apparently shrooms last only up to 6 hours max, which, yeah, this is like more than double that, which is crazy. But now that we're done with level 4, we can get into level 5. Coming in at level 5, we have LSD, which on this chart is definitely the other big recognizable name next to shrooms. And at this point in the video, we're moving from the ones that feel manageable and, introspective in a calming way, and we're getting into the ones that feel fucking chaotic as shit. LSD is fast and sharp and mentally intense. It doesn't ease you into anything. It's like everything that it can do to your mind, it just instantly flips every switch on. The visuals and patterns are at their strongest and most detailed at this point in the video compared to anything before. And while the other ones felt very chaotic in the emotional sense, where it takes you through these deep traumas and stuff and it's intense emotionally, LSD tends to be mirroring that very intense cognitively and psychologically. Instead of you feeling so many things, you're thinking so many things. Your brain becomes loud and fast and extremely interconnected. Now, one of the biggest differences between LSD and everything previous on this list is the mental clarity you get. Because again, with things like shrooms, you feel wavy and kind of out of it. Even on mescaline, it still feels kind of, calming in a sense that you kind of feel drunk and a little bit like that through it. But with LSD, your brain is on fire the entire time. And it's not that everything feels wavy, it's that your thoughts are moving too fast for you to even keep up with. You'll notice every little detail in the room, every shift in your body, every fluctuation in your mood, and your brain starts interconnecting these things before you even know what's happening. This is why people talk about thought loops a lot with LSD, because your brain picks or finds one thing to think about and then runs it over and over and over in different ways in your head, just repeating. And it's not necessarily scary, but it can be very confusing if you don't really know what you're getting into, if you're not prepared for that. Visually, there's not much about LSD that's different than the other ones. It's just very strong, it's just a lot more intense. It's still the same kind of, hallucination, but it's very geometric and sharp and just super intense. People also tend to experience a very high degree of synesthesia, which I think I'm pronouncing that right. But basically that's the phenomenon where colors start to have sounds, and then those sounds from the colors start to have smells, and then those smells from the colors from the sounds start to have emotions and all that kind of thing, where everything feels interconnected and everything starts blending together in a way that makes total sense to you while you're tripping. Like, it just feels obvious, and it's like, yeah, it makes sense that the fucking color has a sound, like, duh. But then obviously anybody sober would tell you that you're crazy. So then when you think about it back when you're sober later on, you think that you were crazy. And this is when I should point out that LSD does last pretty long as well, 10 to 12 hours, which is almost as long as mescaline. So it's on the lengthier side of these trips. LSD sits here at level 5 because it's where these drugs start to really challenge your identity. I mean, you're not fully dissolving into nothingness yet, don't worry, we'll get there, but it does start to mess with your identity and how you see yourself, and it starts to be less easy to track and be aware of. And that brings us to the end of level 5, so we need to get into level 6. Coming in at level 6, we have smoked DMT. At this point in the video, we kind of start leaving the trips behind and start getting into more of leaving reality behind. It feels like you're launched into something completely different from how you experience reality. DMT is a very short-acting psychoactive psychedelic, so it takes not a long, it's like almost instant whenever you smoke or vape it, and then the actual trip doesn't last very long at all. But the effects within that very short trip are way, way stronger and more intense than anything we've seen so far. We're talking effects kicking in within seconds. Your entire idea of what your body is completely disappearing, and your entire visual scope being replaced with nothing but colors and landscapes that don't even match what normal reality in the normal world could ever be. It is not a slow climb. You take a few hits and then you're in the trip already before you even knew what's happening. The main thing that separates DMT from LSD, shrooms, mescaline, that kind of thing is the speed and completeness of the immersion. Because with like the other ones I said, I mean, you're tripping balls, but you still at least have some awareness that you're in a room, that you took a drug, for example. With a full DMT breakthrough dose is what they call it, all of that can completely disappear. Your sense of yourself, your sense of where you are, your sense of even being a person can be gone. Poof. Your body, your surroundings, and your entire past is just gone, and the only thing that exists anymore is what's happening currently in your trip. That can involve extremely complex visions of structures or rooms that again are extremely complex, and a very common thing on DMT is feeling the presence of other entities. Like, I'm sure you've heard of DMT elves, which are the most famous ones, which for some reason is a common hallucination on DMT. And whether that's just the brain doing its shit or supernatural, real god elves is not for me or any scientist to say, really. And then again, I want to bring up the timeline difference here because I never said exactly how long, but a DMT trip lasts about 5 to 10 minutes of intensity and then maybe up to 30 minutes of like come down. That's crazy. This basically means that there's very little room to actually steer the trip at all, or think, or introspect, or any kind of this kind of thing. Like, there's no room for that. You're not walking around or journaling like you would on shrooms or LSD. You're just kind of sitting in one place and letting your brain take you wherever the fuck the DMT wants to take you. And when you come back, most people describe it as not really waking up from a trip, but waking up from something that feels completely outside of reality. A quick thing worth noting here about DMT is the myth that your brain like produces DMT and that's why you dream when you sleep, or that's why you have like these crazy near-death experience visions, you know? Because I mean, that's what I thought. I was writing this script, researching, and I almost put it in without even researching it, but I was like, I should double check. And I looked it up, and apparently that's complete bullshit. The only actual proof we have of that is that people noticed that when rats are near death, they excrete a lot of DMT into their brains. But that was one study, and it wasn't even super conclusive or a whole lot of DMT, and it's fucking rats, not humans. There's no actual human studies that show that. So I don't know where we got that from, dude, but like I swear it's in like every TV show and movie ever. I've heard it so many times, but it's just not true. I mean, we do produce DMT, like they found it in our blood and in our spinal fluid and that kind of thing, but not like a whole lot when we dream. Like that's not why we dream or why we have these visions at near-death experience. Like it's just not a thing. So yeah, that's why DMT is at level 6, one of the craziest psychedelics, because you literally forget that you're a person. And while the physical body risks are a lot lower on this one than a lot of the other psychedelics, interestingly, the psychological risk is crazy. This can absolutely fuck with your head completely. This is not anything casual or recreational, and you should know that just by how far I'm putting it up in this video that it's not something to be messed around with. Do not go out and try it. But That's it for level 6. Now, the final level, bear with me guys, coming in at level 7, we have a full breakthrough dose of salvia. A full salvia trip is one of the most mind-altering, intense, crazy experiences the human brain can theoretically even experience, and that's why it's so high up on this list. The effects come on in seconds. There's no build-up, and the experience is often completely disconnected from your actual environment. And this kind of sounds like DMT, but unlike DMT, which tends to feel emotionally important and visually complex, salvia usually feels alien, confusing, and extremely physically strange. People report turning into furniture or morphing with the floor or the wall. They report experiencing memories from an alien weird angle, or being in situations that they've never even thought of, or anything that's like natural to them, like just completely alien ideas. The biggest thing that sets salvia apart is its dissociative delirium quality, because although it is technically a psychedelic in its own psychoactive plant category, it overlaps with the effects of like the scientific effects of dissociatives and deliriants, but in a weird way that doesn't match up to anything really. During a breakthrough dose, someone can completely forget the idea of where they are, who they are, or even what a human being is. Like, the best way to describe it is that you aren't you anymore, you become whatever the trip is. Like, you just become the trip. Importantly, with zero memory of anything before the trip either. Another defining feature of salvia is how physically disorienting it is. It can basically trick your brain into feeling gravity, but not down. It can feel like you're being pulled or twisted, and pressure can feel like it's completely squishing your body. People might feel like they're being rotated or pressed flat like a pancake, or dragged sideways or folded, all kinds of weird shit. And again, these sensations, they're hard to even describe because they don't match anything that our natural brains can come up with. Like, salvia completely changes how the brain works, so you feel things that you can never ever feel not on salvia. It's a chaotic, crazy event where you just don't know what's going on. You forget that you're even a thing. You just become the trip again. And that's why it's at this high level, because it does what no other psychedelic does. It completely removes you, not even 1% left, just completely. And that's it. There we go, guys. The 7 levels of psychedelics. We did it. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. I had a good time making this one. I had a lot of fun, guys. Let me know what you want to see in the comments for the next 7 levels of blank videos, because you guys seem to really like the drugs one, so I'm gonna keep these up. Thanks for all the support and the nice comments for the face cam, because I was a little bit nervous, but I had a good time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a great night. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos, and most importantly, sweet dreams.